take a moment of your time tonight to talk about the evolving role of the social media strategist, which is what I am. So we're hiring social media folks now, social media marketers. And it's really interesting. What I get a lot of is, I'm good at social media. And I also hear, I'm a social media expert. We get that on a resume. That's weird, guys. That's weird. That's like saying, I'm good at mobile phones, or I'm an expert texter, right? So like, what we expect now has evolved, and I think those of us that are in the room that are social media strategists in some capacity or another understand it used to be proving out the fact that we did work, and now it's proving out the fact that our work does something, right? So, real quickly about me. I'm an atypical social media practitioner. I started in search, in OA. A lot of people come from former PR. You get a lot of strong writers in social media, content creators. I came from more of the SEO side, so I developed a certain amount of rigor that I brought into social media that's helped me my entire career since I started 10 years ago. I started when I was working on a SEO for a client, and I started to see that blogs were outranking my website, my static website, again and again. I went to my boss at the time and I said, you know, we really need to do social media. This is going to be big. And he said, no. So I started an agency. And from that agency, I worked with small to medium businesses. I worked with nonprofits. I worked with government. I worked like large brands, the tiniest brand you can imagine. And I ended up running the consumer channels for Dell, and then moved into the strategy for North America commercial as a whole. So I've experienced sort of all the different levels of what social media marketing means in a digital space. I'm very pragmatic, I'm data-driven, and I don't believe the hype. So what is a social media strategist, and why would you want to be one? I'd kind of like to start with the hype, actually, because when I started, the hype was huge. A lot of books were coming out as people started applying social media to marketing. A lot of books were coming out, and those books, in my mind, were philosophical. And in a lot of ways, they still are philosophy, the power of communities, things like this that are important. But at the same time, that hype, you would start to hear things like companies saying, like, well, we need to do it because our competitors do it. Or, you know, these type of kind of undefined things around what social was and what social could be. So really, as we look at the reality of what social media marketing is today, it's not this thing that's killed SEO, and it's not this thing that has killed OA. It hasn't even killed direct or print, honestly. I think, honestly, what it has done, when it's done correctly, is become a foundation for all of these vehicles, and it works in tandem with them when you're doing it correctly, right? So the foundation for me of social media really starts with data, and it ends with data, okay? When I say that, I think some people sometimes are taken aback. They feel that that diminishes social media in a way. But when we're looking at passion, what makes you passionate about social media, why you would get into something, why you would focus on this as a discipline, a lot of times some of the answers that come up around passion are, I really like to write, I like to work with communities, I like the speed, I like to work real time, I like to see how this sort of new means of communication affects my company and my impact to the business. And I think those passions are really strong, and I think that you need those. But something that's, I think, left out sometimes is you really need to be passionate about solving problems. Problems have to make you angry. You have to look at problems, and you have to say, I will solve that, even if I have to step out of what I think my role is, even if I have to go and talk to data people, even if I have to talk to others, even if I have to go online and learn myself. That's the kind of passion, certainly, I'm always looking for. So, social media, of course, is not, you don't necessarily have to be a data scientist. Though it's helpful if you're a data scientist. A data scientist is a good thing to be, and I wouldn't diminish data scientists in any way. I think they're cool people. But in between the data, there's a layer of creativity. And so how you start, I think, really is, the thing about data is that it's big. And first and foremost, if you don't understand what your goals are with any campaign, you're not really going to understand what data you need to be looking at. You can absorb data all day long. There's products that measure products that measure products, and sort of this endless loop of eternity, right? There's so many different ways that you can read data. The people that stand out are the ones that can quickly understand what data they're looking at, what data they need to look at, and then apply it to a creative solution. So once you have the data and you understand who you're targeting and you understand why, the next step, and the critical step, the step that's actually really hard to learn or be trained, it's almost coming, a lot of it comes from experience, is you've got to take that data and you've got to use it to inspire and motivate. And that's where the creativity comes in. And that's a huge part of what we do as marketers and digital marketers, is we bridge that gap between data and what motivates the customer, right? Or the audience. And then at the end, we prove ourselves. We prove it out. We show the value and the impact of the business of what our social media program has done, and we articulate that. And if we haven't been able to articulate that or show that, other than saying, yeah, people are really engaged, we got a lot of followers, they're like, this is great, this is really good stuff. No, that doesn't work. It doesn't work everywhere. It certainly doesn't work where I am, right? You have to be able to prove it out in a real tangible way. To do that, you need to be relentless. There's no neutral in social media. It doesn't pause. If you learn something that works that day, you change it that day, and if it fails that day, you change it that day. It's real time. And that's what's interesting and exciting about it. It also means you have to be fast. You have to think fast. You have to take areas of data from all different places and outputs and put them together and sort of coordinate them in a way that looks like methodology. And then you have to prove out that methodology, and you have to do it quickly. The other thing I think that's super important is you have to be bold, okay? So actually, like I said, I've done social media in lots of different capacities. In this capacity, I happen to have budget, which is probably not familiar to everyone. But for me, having budget allowed me to actually go and talk to the Facebooks, the LinkedIns, the Twitters, and not just the sales guys, like, you know, the folks that are sort of leading the way, tip of the spear kind of stuff. And what's fascinating is how little they understand about their own platforms. And they'll tell you the same. They're learning at the same rate we're learning. They don't totally know how social media is going to impact the environment. Not totally. They understand their platform to a certain amount, but they don't fully understand how it's going to change and how it's going to veer in the future. You have to be bold. If you have a good idea, and there's not a case study on it, and no one's done it before, you should do it. You should do it. And then fail if you need to fail. Fail fast, as they say, but do it. The areas, this is not, the areas where you will find most achievement are areas where you have done all the heavy lifting, and you have made a commitment to an idea, and you have seen it through in a bold way without waiting for verification. So you have to be bold. And the other thing is you have to be skeptical. There are vendors out there today and everywhere that will tell you they have an end-to-end solution for social media marketing. They will say it is a one-size-fits-all. You plug this thing in, sit back and watch the leads roll in. It's absolutely not true. No one fully understands social media end-to-end, in my opinion. I've never seen it. What I've seen is people that understand parts of it and get really, really good at those parts. And then I've seen smart people pull all those best practices together in something that looks like a solution. And they're ahead of the game, but they're not there. It has not been fully defined, and it is for us to continue to define. So, be skeptical of people that tell you they have the answers. Be skeptical of those folks. So, what are the takeaways? Social media marketing is really digital marketing. And I should say digital marketing is marketing. So I don't know what's going to happen to the term social media marketing. I'm not really sure. Probably it will fade away. Probably it will just be called digital marketing, or maybe just marketing. It is marketing after all, when we apply it in this way, right? And then social media is fluid. So you have to learn as fast as it changes. And that's one of the parts that I think a lot of times people either get or they don't get. If you're not out there actively pursuing something after the agency, you've given your agency enough time, you've given them 8 hours or whatever, you give them 12 hours, it takes additional time, it takes additional passion. On top of that, you have to keep learning, and you have to learn as fast as it changes. Using data analysis to support and drive creative vision, that's the new paradigm, in my opinion. And don't ever tell anyone that you're good at social media, because it's just this vague, weird, nebulous thing that I hate hearing. That's pretty much it. I'd love to take some questions. I tried to leave some time for that. Thank you.
Any questions? We have a question. And I hope you all know who your game show contestants are going to be.
Can you give an example of how you use data in a social media campaign and what the results were?
Sure. So first and foremost, it's understanding your audience. It's also understanding the platforms that you're going to use with those audiences. Different platforms vary for different audiences. Maybe use all three. In the past, many times where we've had success are times when we've looked at the campaign as a whole. So we've looked at OA, SEO, lead gen, all of these different vehicles, and we've added in social. So we've collaborated with online advertising, for instance, to add social elements to the things that they're publishing, right? Or we look at ways that we can build a community that gets interested in what we're doing, and then we serve them up content that's really relevant and topical, and then to download that content, they can fill out like a lead gen form, for instance. Those are really tactical ways to handle it. Other than that, it's just understanding the tonality of your audience, understanding where they are and what they respond to. There's a lot of ways, for instance, in LinkedIn, that we have test piloted groups. We've sort of built out groups just for the pure purpose of listening to those groups, understanding what they respond to and what they don't respond to. You can do things like doing social media organically, so non-paid, and you can understand you get the data back on how the organic is performing, which piece of content is doing better than which other piece of content, and then you put paid behind it. Google is brilliant at that. If you've seen these commercials they do where different animals are dancing together, and they're playing awesome background music, and their videos, the commercials are super popular. Well, they already were popular, right? They were on YouTube, and they got millions of downloads, and they go, oh, should we put dollars behind this? Probably. It works. So these are some areas where you can use data to basically apply social in a more methodical, I would say, or sort of methodical way.
Right, we have one time for one more question over here.
Sure.
We got a mic. Mic's coming right behind you.
Hi, thanks. You kind of mentioned in one of your key takeaways that social media marketing is digital marketing. So where in the agency do you see that there's a role specifically for a social media person or strategist, or is it that it kind of goes up higher and everyone kind of needs to know what's going on? And
within the agency itself?
Within the agency.
Honestly, I'm a fan of the agency having sort of a kind of a collaboration with the other vehicles. Social media especially tends to get siloed really quickly. They go, your social media, do your thing. Meanwhile, all this stuff is happening over here. And when you come back to report, you're not even reporting the same way they're reporting. So from the start, you start by integrating the campaign, and you figure out where there are areas of opportunities to lay social media and community management over the sort of structure they're laying in place, the traditional structure that they understand so well. So that's what I would say. I don't think the social media strategist should be in some echo chamber. They really have to be down in there at the agency level, And a lot of times what agencies do, no offense to agencies, is they'll take like their worst social search guy and put him in social. Have you seen that before? It's like, I don't know, I just put this guy, he's okay, I think we're rethinking how we look at that. I definitely think we're rethinking and looking for a skill set that's a lot more aggressive.
Great. Thanks, Adam. That
Sure.
was fantastic. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah.